Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode 14 of this Valorant Life. And this episode, Adam and I are going to dive into Sunset, a map clearly from the community poll that you don't know how to play, and I don't know how either. And so this is a great map for us to dive into because we are just wandering around with our heads cut off, or like chickens with their heads cut off. That's the term. And so we have the pleasure of getting it to dive in with Adam today, and we're gonna jump in now. So Adam, as we think through Sunset, is maybe actually even before we dive into Sunset, is Sunset like any other maps that you would almost call back to? I'm going blank right now, but there are certain sites that reflect other sites on different maps. Is there anything like that for Sunset?
The closest example I can think of is I always relate Sunset in my head kind of like a scent split mixture.
Okay.
Um, Mid is kind of like a scent, and the site, like B bomb site in particular, is kind of like B split.
Oh
Just
yeah,
because you
because
have
of the
the long
pillar.
lane. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. So that's kind of how I categorize it, but it plays somewhat similar between the two, I think.
Okay, so we're gonna kind of follow the same format we did last time. We're gonna start attacking. We're gonna go defaults. We're gonna go through standard executes and rushes. We're gonna go from there to defense. What are the basic setups? What are the mid-round adjustments and rotations? And how are you gonna defend certain sites? So that's kind of the standard way we're gonna go through all of these. We're gonna start with attacking on Sunset. So maybe Adam, where would you start us with a standard default on attack for Sunset?
Yep. So Sunset's kind of easy to take mid control, I think. So I do kind of want to outline that most of the rounds you should be trying to take mid if you can. Unfortunately, you don't have great access to an A split from top mid. So it's more so just establishing mid control to deny the rotates and breaking the door, right?
Okay.
That's priority number one. Breaking door, breaking trip, something there, just getting some presence there. And then you do want to leave. So if you guys recall, if you guys watched the episode before, if not, most defaults that I like to call in ranked are 1-4s. So you have one player here and then four players here, right? 1-4. You do want to have the one player, ideally either in B main or A main. It
Okay.
actually doesn't matter too much where that player is, but my preference is B main because easier to split B than it is. It's easier to split B, sorry, than it is to split A. Like I said, because of the top mid thing. So
So let me remind you, if you don't know what a default is, we're not going to spend the time here to define it because I think Adam did a great job defining it in our last episode, which our glorious editor Peter will put here. Yeah, you can see. Okay, there, and you can go watch that, and then come back to this video and watch all the videos, right? But maybe as we get into this, Adam, why don't you throw it at like a standard comp for attack? And I mean, this doesn't need to be your comp, but it's just representative. And then we can talk about how maybe we'd split up. Because like I think, you know, a cipher would be the standard lurker on this map, right? But who would be the other, what would be another like normal comp for this map?
yeah, so great question. You typically your Sentinel is Cypher, so that's an
Yeah.
easy one. Your initiator choice, actually, you have a lot of options. They're all viable. Literally, when I say all viable, I mean every single initiator you could play on this map. And
Okay.
actually, I believe we've seen every single initiator played on this map so like thus far in VCT. Correct me if
Hmm.
I'm wrong,
Hmm.
but I'm pretty sure we have. Even Breach, where boom. So yeah, they're all pretty viable. So you could literally play whatever initiator combo you want. The important thing is that you have at least one info initiator. So like you don't really want to play, I don't know, breach KO for example. Sure, you get
Yeah.
info with the KO knife, but it's a little bit harder to do it. So
Hmm.
regardless, let's just say that you have two of these initiators. For this example, I'm just going to pick Gecko and Fade just because I think they're cool,
Okay.
and I'll just throw out these two. And then your duelist is typically going to be Raze on this map. Raze is very strong here, and then you're
Yeah.
also going to have Omen normally. So this is kind of standard. We could even go as far to just to take out the Fade to make it simple, and I'm just going to put two Geckos because I think it's going to be a little bit easier to follow what a
Sure.
default would look like.
Sure.
So default here, you would have your Cypher go B main. The camera is somewhere here to spot the B main cross. A lot of people like to cross, so you have the camera here. Your Cypher slow works B main.
Can you set that camera pre-round?
Yes, you can set it up pre-round.
Okay, so there's like a little grate.
There's two windows. You could
Okay,
actually
okay,
pick between the windows, left or right. Doesn't really matter. It's a subtle difference, but typically you put it on the left to see deeper, but whatever.
okay.
Camera spots the B main cross. That means your Cypher can take B main freely. Your smokes player typically will either smoke and come tiles, or they will sit outside A. But for the sake of this example, we're just going to leave it simple on a 1-4. So we're just going to go for
Okay.
mid. Here your Gecko will probably flash over mid or something like that.
Mhm.
And then you guys kind of just walk out. And then the goal is, again, to work into market and break this this door and a trip. So yeah, that's pretty much standard default. You have the player tiles, and then you have some players come top mid, and you go like this, and then you work into market, while this Omen player here is kind of just holding the top mid smoke.
Okay. And so what's the plan here? So you have, let's say you have B main control, you've broken door. So really what you're trying to do, you're like, it's really, you're probing at this point, right? Like you're not fully committing to busting through market and hitting B site. You're really just trying to put pressure on the defense. They feel like they now have to cover market. The door is broken. They can't play with their back to it. Like they can't play here and here to ping pong off of the execute off of B main. Like they can't like play off of each other because they need to be looking back at market. So like, is that what we're trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, so you bring up the huge point of getting rid of market space from defenders. So as soon as you get rid of the space that defenders can play here, you eliminate so many possibilities, right? So just for this example, let's just put Astra's here. Astra can't play here anymore. She can't play here. She's going to have to fall all the way back here or back here, right?
Back pillar.
And those, you can't really hold B against a B split like that if you're kind of stuck in these two areas. So similar to B splitting on split, you eliminate all of the spots like hell, rafters, like even the B heaven angles.
Okay.
That's what your goal here is. Like market is equivalent to B heaven in this case.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I totally see that.
so that's what you're trying to do here. Again, though, like you said, you're not trying to force a B split. You can, and honestly, most oftentimes in ranked, when you're probing market, your teammates will kind of just mindlessly go into market and go anyways, which, you know, as long as you have a B main player, you can make it work. But most of the time, you just break the door, break util, and typically the defense, their reaction to the mid default will actually be a one-way smoke. So if they're playing Omen, they actually do a one-way smoke on the door. And that now means we have to reset. So what tends to happen as you climb the ladder is when this smoke goes up, either attackers will then pivot to go top mid and push for this, like push for a fight top mid, which is, I want to say this is like a secret of Sunset. It's actually very elusive. The top mid fight is better for attackers than it is for defense, in my opinion.
Oh, interesting. I would think it would be better for attackers because I would think you're kind of walking into like a natural crossfire between a guy standing there and a guy standing like here.
Yeah, there is a natural crossfire, but you could see like the terrain here, the fact that this part is up a little bit means that the sightline that you see isn't accurate, right? So like, let's say the enemy jett is here and then we put the raise here. If I kill the jett here, the KO will never be able to trade me. You see what I'm saying? So on that note, like, yeah, the top mid fight is actually pretty good for attackers to take as long as you do it in a group, because you can trade out here and then you can pretty much control all of their rotate. Like this is the power. Once you take this top mid space, they now have to rotate super passive through spawn, and I mean that's just so much time wasted. So yeah, it's good to get a pick there. So that's typically what happens after you get smoked off market, or let's say like market's very scary.
The power of pushing through top mid on split to get to like CT rotates, you actually have to push through like B site heaven and go all the way down those stairs, right? Like that push through to that back rotate is so far. But here, the moment you're through mid and you have control, you suddenly have so much power over their rotates, right? Like you're just right in it because that's the natural quickest rotate path and the one everyone's going to take.
It's kind of like Haven front B, where like defenders would like to rotate through B as the fastest rotate instead of going CT.
Yeah, so if you
kind
actually
like
had a lurker B, which you often like, let's say just set up like a KJ outside there, just waiting to hear people's rotates, right? It's so powerful.
Yeah,
and
kind
and
of
I think
like
fundamentally, I feel like fundamentally on attack and defense, if what you do fundamentally makes the other side super uncomfortable, it's usually a really good thing.
Yeah, I like that. making them uncomfortable. Honestly, I don't really think about that too much, but I like that frame of thinking.
Well, because the moment you're like, if you're on defense, the moment they've gone through top mid, you're like, oh, they could be like, if you're on playing A, they're like, oh, they could be behind me. I can't rotate. Oh, we're split up now. I'm gonna get crunched. Like I feel like the natural like paranoia that comes from that is like a really good thing. That's like that's what you want to be accomplishing rather than the defense, let's say in this case, feeling like they're in control.
Right, right. One quick counter to this,
Yep.
since we're on the topic, we'll hop over slightly to defense. Is actually good ciphers will either put their trip here or put their camera here because of
Okay.
that threat. In lower elo, you'll almost always see double trips either on B or a
Hmm.
trip market and a trip B because they don't
Hmm.
actually know about the top mid threat,
Hmm.
either because people don't abuse it
Hmm.
or because they just don't think about tripping mid.
Hmm.
But again, it's kind of like tripping B on Haven. You'd almost always want to trip B on Haven, so it's like the same idea. So yeah, jumping a little bit ahead, but I think it's worth noting. Okay, so this is the basic default, right? You're looking to work into B, you're looking to work into mid, and you're just trying to get a kill. If you get the kill, you can typically just speed up, you can reset, you can do whatever you want.
Hmm.
But the main goal here is just to get a good feel for their defense, try to break some trips, figure out what the opera is. Like that's the goal of most defaults anyways.
Hmm.
That's variation one. This is probably the one you're going to run the most.
Okay.
I do kind of want to hop over to the variation where the cipher is not here and he's actually towards A and he's going for an A lurk.
So,
Right.
but maybe before we do that, just one quick question is,
Okay.
what's your signal to go? Is it like you get a kill, like go? Like is that the signal?
So there's two signals. The first one is yes if you get the kill, but to me it's a little bit more complex than that, and it's basically like, do I know that that's the weaker site? So, for example, this is going to make a lot of sense once we talk about defense, but just give you a sneak peek. Defenders typically hold A by throwing this one-way smoke and then throwing flash, right? And that's how they control the space. And then they'll have a player at elbow and maybe even a player at lane. So when you can kind of count util on the A side, this is up to your omen to hear it. Let's say like, oh yeah, they're fighting for A. You hear the one way, you hear the flash, maybe you even hear the sky flash, the KO knife. And then you get the kill B market, then you know almost for sure that you can probably take B side, right? If they didn't do that A util and we got the kill here, I probably don't speed up.
Okay.
So that's, yeah, just a little nuance there, but just kind of knowing that they're contesting A is, I think, important.
Okay. So I cut you off. You were going to show what it looks like with Cypher working A.
Yes. So the benefit of having the Cypher A this time, instead of putting the camera B as well, you could also put the camera here. You could also leave it B. It doesn't really matter. Just get the info. The important thing here, though, is by having this body here, you're actually able to walk up A once the smoke fades. So let's just simulate the round a little bit. We're going to start this guy here. We're going to have the camera here. You know, let's just lay it like literally this is round start, okay? I'm going to bring all the util. What's going to happen is if they do fight A, this one way is going to come up and then the flash is going to come up. And at the same time that this is happening, attackers are taking mid space, right?
Yep.
So this is kind of like a more of a normal round. After this is happening, either the jett or the KO takes the line and holds the one way, and then the other two players leave.
Yep.
Because the jett has the line, right? Why should they stay? So then when they come in contact mid or whatever, like these guys get contact mid, your Cypher can walk up it and take the 1v1 on this jett. And if he gets the kill, he has full A site.
Yeah.
So he's playing for the kill and not for map control, right? There's a difference here. Where on here, he's just like when he's B main, he's just playing for B main control. I'll just put the Cypher here. He's playing for B main control, get the orb, maybe break a trip or two. That's what he's playing for. But when he's over on A, he's looking for this kill, and he's looking to try to immediately take the space and throw this cage here.
So is he really trying to just straight up dry duel the jett? Or is he kind of holding an off angle, hoping she gets greedy to like push into mid, trying to flank or backstab our guys mid?
Yep, great question. Short answer would be both, but this really depends on how confident your player is. For example, if I'm like really new to Cypher, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm probably just going to hold the off angle for like the first 30 seconds and cross my fingers.
Yeah.
But if you watch Xander, for example, or really any pro senti player, they're going to be confident just swinging this jett if the jett's even posted on this crack angle, and they're going to get that kill. So
Why? What makes them confident about swinging this jett other than that they're cracked, right? Like what is it situationally that they feel like they can take this duel and it's a good one?
Probably have counted numbers well. So they probably know that there's two players top mid, like based on util counting or their teammates comms, and they know that they're taking a straight up 1v1.
Okay.
Right. The other thing too might just be that they know how the enemy player plays just based on previous round tendencies. So they're confident for that angle.
And so would you say this is like a 50-50?
I honestly would favor the attacker here unless the jett has an op. If the jett has an op, then it's completely favored for the jett.
Yeah.
Probably like 80-20. But if it's like a rifle versus rifle, I'd probably give odds like 60-40 to the Cypher.
Okay. Why in particular would it be favored for the attacker?
So everyone knows kind of like what slicing the pie is at this point, but because you can kind of like angle out each one, let's say you clear close, you clear the off angle, and you clear here, you can literally take your time, right? And when you can take your time on most engagements as a lurker, you will catch the player holding off guard. So it's like the anticipation that you're about to get a duel compared to the jett who's kind of going into like a lull state where like they're falling asleep a little bit
because they're like looking at their mini map, or they're like trying to think about where the other players are. Like they can't be like full attention for like 30 seconds straight.
Yeah. And the other thing I will outline is like the jett doesn't have that many strong off angles to play to kill the lurking up Cypher. If she does play it somewhat passive, she can. Let's say she plays back here, then it's almost guaranteed that she'll kill the Cypher. But that also gives the opening for Cypher just to walk up lane, right?
Okay.
So if the jett does want to control the entire space, maybe they would play here instead, kind of off angle-ish. But again, the Cypher can reasonably walk up solo and just take this fight and clear the angle without that much danger. Okay. So there's just not that many strong off angles for the jett here, in my opinion.
The one other thing I want to point out, and I want to throw this out to you, is I feel like the other reason that like a pro senti player would want to take this fight is if they know it's a 1v1 and they know this, let's say 55-45 fight, basically opens up A site. That's a super high leverage duel, right? Like if 55% of the time you just get A site for free, like that's a good trade.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's like the risk reward that you're going for there. And on that note, we can get into a quick tangent. Higher level players know typically what their win condition is, either as a broad high level, like, oh yeah, my team, if we use Killjoy ult this round, we're going to win the round, right? Like that's the basic. But higher level players understand what the win condition is based on what they can control in the round. So the win condition for the Sentinel player here, aka the Cypher, is to kill the jett. If he doesn't kill the jett, then he's relying on his teammates to win the duels in mid, right? So it's essentially like, I guess, taking responsibility over the round and knowing that that's the play for the Cypher.
Okay.
So yeah, I feel like that kind of covered defaults decently enough for Sunset.
How do we want to be executing on B? How do we want to be executing on A?
Okay, so I'll start with B because I think B is the easiest. Let me switch this over. Ideally, you have the Cypher camera to spot just in case no one crosses. If your camera does exist, all of your teammates will shift walk up on this wall and then execute as soon as you're executing, rounding the corner. So because Cypher is such a meta pick on this map and this tripwire here is impossible to break, it feels like you have to use util. So if you have a race, you throw the nade, you could either throw it into the corner or bounce it off the wall here. I'll draw it. Boop, boop, bounce it off here. And then this nade will also break any kill trips that are vertical like this. So this is probably the best nade you can do to break trips. Okay. You should be throwing this nade every single time if they have a Cypher on this map. Yeah. Every single time. You could throw a satchel to break it, right? You could do that, but after the satchel nerf, you have to wait for it to rest. You know, there's like all this stuff. So it's just better to commit the nade. Yeah. Okay. So that's number one. If you don't have the raise nade and they're playing Cypher and you have nothing to break it, you just don't go B. You go through market. Okay. So that's first. Two is the smokes. So typically you play Omen on this map. One tidbit here is that you can either put the smoke like I have now, or you can actually put the smoke closer to the site so it covers that corner there. Okay. Shopify Rebellion, the Game Changers team, likes to do the smoke like I have it on screen now, but most ranked players will do it like this, where it's a little bit further to the right, so they can also Omen blind and kill the player that comes out. So this is where your Omen Blind is going, just for the full right lane. And this will also let your duelist, when he comes out, route out right side.
Got it. Let me point
like
out,
this.
because of the prevalence of the trips, I think that's why Fade is getting played a lot on this map, because the dogs are just your sacrifice to those trips if you don't want to need it.
Right. The Prowlers are super good here, 100%.
Okay. And what? So now you're out on site. You've taken your fights. Are you fighting to clear back site, or and you're trying to plant front site, or are you okay with one or two defense players just stuck back site?
Good question. Typically you do want a full clear site, so your duelist will either route to the right side following the Omen Blind, similar to the Haven C-Long execute. With the Omen Blind right side, the Jett would go logs. But if you don't have the blind, or if you just feel confident, you can go straight up the middle. If you have enough util, then you'll do it that way. But it's better, I think, to have the duelist go right side like this, because then you can pinch the site with your teammates. And you do want a full clear site, not necessarily because you can't plant without it, but because it lets you play these strong post plant positions here. So if you guys can see, we have the box here. You could play next to it, which is insane. And then you can also play this headshot angle here, which is also insane. For these two reasons, if you're in the post plant here and you don't have util to clear these two angles, you're most likely going to lose the post plant. From a defender's POV, if you're playing attacker and you're in these two spots, you typically win. So these two spots are insane. You can also get the Omen and Crossfire here too. And then the Pillar player, like, you just have all these crossfires. Pillar player swings off of market contact. Omen Raise gets contact here.
And what would be your decision making? It sounds to me like it's fairly clear that your preference would be to play on site and not play all B main.
Yeah, I hate playing the B main post plant. To be honest, it's only good if you have like mollies, but because Cypher's the pick and not Killjoy, you typically don't play for time like that. So yeah, I prefer to play on site for sure.
And what would cause you to push through CT or into market, or not push through CT into market once you've got your plant?
It's just all info. For example, like if I have like a Cypher lurking mid on this execute, so we did a 4-man execute and the Cypher's mid, and I see him kind of coming up, then I'll like decide to push through market and kind of pinch with him.
Okay.
If I don't have that Cypher, I'm not doing that, or I'm only doing it if I have like Rocket or something.
Okay.
And the only time I'm pushing into spawn here is like if I ego swung from pillar, got the kill, and I have a timing.
That feels really good for B side. Maybe let's move over to A. What does an execute on A look like? Are we just because of the two elbows? How are you approaching this on attack?
Yep. So A site's a lot harder to execute than B site. I'll show you the most common way, and then the way that I think is a little bit better, because I think it's a little bit different. So the most common way, we'll start with the Cypher camera here. Omens will blind off of the camera with the Cypher camera. Then your duelist will kind of just run up with it. And they meet Jett here. Stop the guy from peeking. I'll put Jett from killing our raise, right? They need to go into elbow. So commonly this would be, Prowlers as well, or like Gecko Wingman or Gecko Flash, right? And they're just going to take elbow. And the majority of players tend to go elbow. Boop, boop, boop. Let's just throw in another Gecko for this example. So now we have 3 players elbow. And then the Omen after the flash will kind of come up late on the left side. I'm going to get rid of the flash. The Jett most likely repositions towards site here. And I forgot about the smokes. So you have 2 smokes here after he throws the Omen blind. And this is kind of the execute. Now you're trying to pinch site. What ends up happening, though, is the defender smokes player will either one-way this box or throw a smoke here. And now your Omen cannot go through this smoke. So then... we're just pushing out elbow, and then they just all get, messed up. The spawn player runs out. This guy has, let me put this guy as an enemy. Like, they have a decent crossfire. The guy backside here, by the way, is super hard to kill. Unless you're playing Breach or something, or you have like a molly lineup. Whoever plays back here typically is good for 2 kills. Most of the time. At least 1, but typically 2. So, yeah, because this smoke exists here.
What about that? Why is that position? Clearly, you're pointing out that position is really uncomfortable for you to clear out as an attacker. What about that position? Is it because you can peek up both sides and you're not sure which angle to hold, or?
Yeah, so it's The best way I can explain it is there's a crossfire on both sides. So for example, if the KO gets contact for the Jett, or vice versa, the Jett gets contact for the KO, they both play off of each other well, and the ISO can play off of the Jett well. So it's a very strong pivot point,
Got
like anchor point for teammates to play off of.
Okay.
So like if the Omen pushes through the smoke, for example, he kills the KO, the Jett gets the trade frag almost instantly. Let's say the ISO's through the smoke, he dies, the Jett's gonna get the trade frag instantly. So yeah, it's rough. Yeah, it's rough. Okay, so that's the typical execute on an A. It works sometimes, it works other times no. The way I like to execute A is similar. I'm gonna keep the smokes. I'll keep the players for now. So the Jett's gonna be here. I actually like to send majority players go lane first. So let's say the camera spots Jett, flash goes up, and then we just rush this Jett. We send this guy up, like we just go fast in order to beat the smoke timing that the defenders throw here.
Got
right?
it.
So if you can beat the smoke timing, the Jett falls back here. Now we have numbers here, and the enemy KO in this instance will not be able to push through the smoke comfortably because there's 3 players on this side.
Yep.
And then you can kind of send like players late elbow. That's how I prefer to take it. It works a little bit better sometimes, but there's downsides to both, to be honest.
And how are you thinking about post plant? Like where are your ideal plant locations, and how are you playing it?
Okay, good question. So let's start with plants. Most common plant will probably be here because you can play it from elbow.
Yeah.
The best plant, however, is probably front sight in front of this box because you can see it from elbow and from lane. But most people don't plant here because they don't know. But those would be my 2 favorite plant spots. In terms of post plant positions, if you have someone to get on elevation, top gen is insanely good. And then on reverse, this box is now insanely good. So when you play this box, you could also play crouched under here. I don't really like this spot too much, but I know Woohoojin likes it. And then you also want to play a guy in elbow either here or here to just kind of play off of contact. So what can end up happening is top gen gets contact, for example. Let's just get rid of this KO. Let's make it like a 3v3 scenario. Top gen gets contact for this guy. He holds here. Let's say enemy ISO runs in. It did not switch. Hold on. Harbor, because I misclicked. He runs in. If the Omen gets the kill, great. If not, Jett gets the trade almost 100% of the time. And if Jett doesn't get the trade in Harbor, like our ally Harbor has a timing, he will also get the trade. So it's very hard for them to push through here. And vice versa, like the Harbor gets contact spawn. Let's say like if he's holding the Jett here and he gets contact, then the Omen can pivot to swing the Jett, or the Jett can swing. So like we just have options to play off of each other. It's very good.
And generally, it doesn't feel as good. Like you're generally, I feel like not pushing into spawn.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, typically on Sunset, actually, you don't really go for spawn control like that. Yeah. You can, if you get a time, you can go through here and control spawn, but you definitely don't have to.
So maybe for both of these, because of how similar mid is to split, how common is it or useful is it to have that late lurk mid?
Okay, so the late lurk mid gives you high chances of closing out the round, but not because of the same reason for split.
Okay.
The reason that the late lurk mid on split is good is because you can play the spike, right? And you can see the spike when you late lurk mid. For example, if you plant open on B or A, you can see it from heaven/rafters, right? You can't do that on this map, but the reason why it's good is because you have short access to the bomb site anyways. So in the example of Cypher here, if he does late lurk mid and he flanks A, he's almost immediately going to get contact on a player here, which is really good. Let's move the Harbor back. And same on market. If he late lurks mid, he's almost immediately going to get contact on the guy who goes on the retake. I'll put Jett here. So that's more of the reason. It's the lurkers playing for kills.
Playing for kills instead of trying to play off bomb.
Yeah.
Maybe quickly, the last thing, I forgot to ask this on Ascent. What are your dorkiest eco strats? Like what do you do on eco on offense? Do you like run up mid, run through spawn, do a couple laps around spawn? Like what are the crazy things that you would tell people to do on eco?
Yeah, I wish I had a good one like Pearl. Pearl used to be insane. I had like a crazy win rate on it. But like you said, I think the strat is actually to push that top mid smoke. You probably have a smoke here, and then before you push in, you smoke again on the left side, and then you
Yeah.
kind of just go crazy.
Okay.
You just hope maybe to kill the A guy and then flood spawn or go this way and just get a plant like that.
Okay. Just play, let out your inner chaos.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so maybe we'll move on to the defending side then. What does the typical setup look like on defense?
You have some type of info gathering tool in A. For the example of this, I'll just keep it simple to Gecko Flash. Gecko Flash is high here. You have the Omen one way here if you're fighting for A, and then you have a player in elbow to contest it. That's kind of the strat. If the Omen is here, he could also flash. You could do that too, but yeah, you're fighting for this one way. That's one setup on A. And then typically your Cypher will play B. He's going to have a trip somewhere like this. He's also going to have either a trip top mid if he knows about it. Otherwise, he's going to put the trip market. This is your standard setup. You typically have someone play this top mid area. So that means that after the Gecko throws a flash, he might be in this area. And then you have a market player. So let me just go put the agents here. Cypher B.
Is he just, because he's going to be smoked off, the top mid guy is going to be smoked off top mid most of the time. Is he just waiting there to see if he has a timing to push through? Or is he just watching the walkout? Like what's his goal there?
Yeah, so typically when your top mid player is here, he's either looking to fast rotate A to go for spam kills mid / get info mid, or he's going to be trying to rotate to market to beef up the B rotate. So he's just a fast rotating position.
Got it.
That's centralized to kind of get info.
Okay.
Unless you're pushing out like a maniac, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, that's kind of his role here.
Cypher's playing like back B pillar. Where would the other player on B site be playing?
Yeah, so I moved this Gecko here. Typically this guy starts the round by closing the door, and then he's going to come back and look B. That's typically how it goes. If the door breaks, then he can play off of the trip and stuff like that, but he does kind of live in this little area here. Yeah, that's pretty much the basic setups. Sometimes you will do mid aggression or you will do B main aggression. This is the A aggression variation, where you play for the one way. That doesn't always have to be the case. So if you want to aggress B main, for example, you would have someone cross behind the box, and then you would have someone break the camera. So typically the Cypher peeks, breaks the camera, Raze crosses. They have some type of crossfire. If you want to aggress mid, this one's kind of easy. You can do it a few ways, but the main thing that you want to have is the smoke here, and then you want to have someone push tiles. You could walk push it. You could double satchel just to get there faster. If you do the double satchel, you could have your Omen play A and then blind like this, easy up the kill. You could do that as well. But yeah, that's typically how you aggress mid. Otherwise, if you do have an opper, let's say the Raze is opping, or you do have a Jett or something like that, then they'll just kind of sit at market and then kill the guy tiles. That's pretty much Sunset default for defense, I think.
The aggression A feels pretty strong here, because if you can control that, you're controlling both elbows, right? So it's kind of like a lobby on Haven, feels like.
Yes.
A little. Like if you can control that, like let's say you can set up a Jett on an op there on a line, that feels like you're living the dream. It's a little bit closer than a lobby in that case, but you're kind of living the dream because you've set up one guy to control like 2 lanes. That feels really strong. So that's kind of the goal, I feel like, is like if you can set that up, leave one guy there in a favorable duel, and then you can actually, recalibrate with the rest of your team to control the rest of the map.
Yep, I think that's accurate.
That feels really strong. I'm not seeing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Like obviously, like they're going to counter that if they know you're going to do it every round. But like, is there equivalent plays or ways to play the map on B or in mid to try to kind of achieve similar advantages, or do you think that that's probably one of the best ways to achieve that advantage on defense?
Good question. There's not a great one-to-one. A main control is definitely the strongest on this map by far, but if you do have mid control, like you do this top mid space and you kind of control mid, you have a guy here, you have a guy here, you're kind of contesting a little bit, maybe he walks up by the smoke, that's doable. B main control isn't as good. Like if we were aggressing B main, you break the trip, like it doesn't feel as strong to me. But you could do it, right? You can nade behind the box here. You can omen blind and run up. Like there's ways to do it. It just doesn't feel as good. I would probably favor A main / mid control over B main control.
B main control, I feel like doesn't feel as, it reminds me a little bit about B main, or sorry, A main on Ascent, but because of the lane aspect, but it feels way more even. Whereas I feel like whoever gets there first has a big advantage on A main control on Ascent. Like I feel like even if you got a crossfire here and you got one guy here, like these guys can appear at like a bunch of different places to swing you. Like they're like both sides feel like it feels pretty even. Like, do you agree? Or does that make sense?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the part that reminds me the most about Ascent, A main, and let me delete everyone, is the fact that once you actually are here, pushing out further feels very dangerous. And I
Yeah.
kind of feel like that's how it is when I push Ascent A main.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's a lot of boxes they can be hiding behind. One question I have is, because we didn't talk about this, is if you are this, let's say it's Jett. This guy, if they hit B site, like you're on defense, this is a defense Jett. If they hit A or B site, it feels like this guy has no choice but to try to find some flank either here or there. Like that feels
Mm-hmm.
way better than trying to like rotate all the way back and eventually get there like a year too late. Like, am I thinking about that right? Or like how is this player, should this player be thinking about how to play the map when the other team's hitting the other side?
Yep, good question. This is going to be a common thing as we kind of outlined that the defender Jett takes this angle because we're fighting for A main with the one way in the smoke. So that I kind of wanted to draw that context first. So yes, this Jett will be in this category a lot. And like you said, kind of pushing for the flank is good. More oftentimes than not, I see people actually go spawn because it feels a little bit safer. And their goal
Mm,
actually is to try to flank B or contain them in B main and kind of keep them stuck. But that doesn't mean that you can't go mid. If you do go mid, you have to just be aware that there might be a lurker here, and you want to do it shift walking and try to kill the lurker. So maybe the Cypher,
okay.
for example.
Are there any other mid round, like, okay, so maybe the last one is, and I feel like it's fairly straightforward, is the rotations over time. I feel like it's fairly clear that you just be fast rotating the top mid guy to whichever site that people are hitting, right?
Yep, yep. So actually, your raise can be kind of floaty, but
Yeah.
if your raise is playing A and he's anchoring, just for this example, your gecko and your say your omen would be the rotators. But sometimes you can also have your omen anchor and all that stuff. But just I guess for the sake of this, yeah, it's kind of straightforward. Your raise would stay here, and then your gecko and your omen would rotate together.
So it feels, at least on defense, feels fairly linear. Maybe the one thing we didn't go over. So let's we've gone over the basic setups. How are you defending like 5-man executes? Like, so for B, let's say B, they're 5-man executing through B main. Are you trying to hold backside? Are you okay falling to Boba over here? On B side on an execute, are you okay falling here? Or are you trying to stay back here behind pillar?
So most of the time, I would advise that the Cypher plays for the site. The only time that I would say the Cypher is okay to leave is if they never had a market player in the first place. So,
Okay.
for example, like, let's say this market guy just insta died. Then as a Cypher, I might be more willing to just give it up and try to play for market. But typically, you do want to hold the backside pillar space here because you have a chance to win the round.
On defense, are you closing that door off rip? Are you closing it when there's pressure up mid? When are you closing? What are you doing with that door and when?
So most of the time, most people would just benefit from insta closing the door, just so you don't have to worry about it. Kind of like sage walling mid on
Mhm.
split. But when you're not doing it, is kind of when you're opping mid or if you want to push mid.
And what about the same question for the 5-man push on A? Are you trying to hold elbow? Like, would that be ideal? Or are you totally okay falling back here and playing for the retake?
So because this smoke is so common on the one way on the right side, you can almost guarantee that if you have enough util delay, that you can fall back into sight, not elbow, but into the sight behind this box.
Okay.
You play one player there, and then you play the other player will fall back into one of these smokes here, and kind of just play off of the sight player. So yes, you do kind of fall back just to avoid the util, but you kind of come back through. Like you might play here, for example, or this player here might come back out here. So you fall back to avoid the util, but you come back through to play off of the site guy. And if this
Okay.
site guy doesn't exist, then you're almost forced to give site.
Between the two sites, between A and B on defense, are they roughly equivalent in your mind in terms of retake scenarios, or is one way harder than the other?
I would say B, in my experience, is harder to retake just because of the headshot angle and the little close angle here. But if you do have util to save for it, say you have the Omen Blind to go through here or Breach Stun, then actually I think retaking B is easier than it is to retake A. So basically, B is only stronger or harder to retake because of these two angles. So if you have a way to deal with it, then it's easier.
This is a broad question. How do you think about mid rounding on this map in particular?
I kind of think about it most maps like you're just looking for where the weak side is. So if I'm on attack, for example, I want to find where the op is and go opposite. So if the op is A, I'll go B, or if the op is B, I'll try to go A. It's pretty standard. For defense on the mid round, you don't really go for the late round pushes like this too often. So the mid rounding more is like, oh, can I rotate fast enough to guess where they're going and kind of stop the hit that way.
Okay.
That I think for that reason, defenders are kind of a little bit on a back foot. It feels harder to push, so you're kind of just hoping for kills.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Well, maybe the last one would be on eco. On defense, you just stacking sites.
Yeah, you could try to go for the A orb. Like you could fight it. You could also try to play a trap setup B. That's pretty your standard. Sometimes people will just run down mid with like shotguns, especially if you have the double satchel here. You could definitely do that, but you don't really have too many creative options, I don't think, aside from maybe the mid tiles pinch. I guess something I didn't cover, we did talk about the satchel pinch into tiles where the Raze was kind of doing it alone. But as you established earlier, if you do have a player that control the A main elbow space, because the access is actually pretty close here, you can do a full A main plus tiles pinch on defense if you have enough util and bodies. So let's say the Omen did blind A main, or sorry, for the Raze here, and then you had like, I don't know, a Fade Eye to go through here. You could reasonably just have 3 start A, and then 1 double saturate down tiles, and then 1 kind of support the Raze, and then just fully control this area here. This is a little bit more advanced, but it is an option.
Yeah, that's just the way the map geometry works. Like you couldn't really do that for B main. Is there anything else that you feel like we need to talk about Sunset that you didn't talk about?
Nothing comes to mind aside from maybe attackers prioritizing this orb. You could reasonably get that orb on your initiator or your Raze pretty commonly on most rounds. Okay. So that's a pretty free orb.
Yeah, this feels like this orb is much more dangerous and easier to contest from both sides.
Yeah. That's a hard orb to get for both halves for sure.
Okay. Well, with that, then I would say this episode is coming to its sunset. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Adam, for illuminating this map for us so we can understand how to play it. Thanks to everyone on the community wall and for watching the last episode as well. We'll keep doing this and we'll keep asking for feedback as well in terms of what you want us to be doing next. Yeah, that's it for us this week. We look forward to doing more of these.
Cool.
Okay. Have a good day, everyone.